In February, I was at the beautiful Risley Hall Hotel for the Nottingham GP by 7th City Collectables. Held in the beautiful grounds of a manor hotel, it was an excellent way to almost completely ignore the splendour of the natural world and shut myself inside to play toy soldiers. Kiwi did periodically drag me outside until I could tempt her back inside with the promise of brekkies. It was then time for me to head back into the hall for another day of hardcore dice rolling. For this fresh, wintry day 2, players would be split into pools based on their performance in day 1. Given I had won 2 games and lost 2 games in day 1, it didn't take much mathematical wizardry to divine that I was in the middle pool. I'd be tackling my pod with the Riders of Théoden. Anyone who needs a recap need only know that that's Théoden, Dernhelm, Gamling with banner, a second banner, 19 other Riders of Rohan, and 2 Royal Guard. Only Dernhelm has a throwing spear. My first game of the day was against Johnny Wright and his last alliance of Numenor and Rivendell. His force included mounted Glorfindel and a whole bunch of elves, and then mounted Elendil and a smattering of Numenorian warriors. The game was Seize the Prize, and the prize was marked by that little puck there in the middle. In Seize the Prize, of course, you're trying to dig up an object in the middle of the board and then carry it off the opponent's board edge. Given my army is entirely nippy horses, and they all have the expert rider rule, which means that they can carry the object without encumbrance, this is a really good one for me. But that meant the pressure was on not to screw it up. Right from the off, Gamling threw one of his mites into a march, so I could start to form a defensive line ahead of the prize and stop my enemy getting to it. You have to roll a test to see if you dig up the prize, and I wanted to make sure I had enough time to get a good few attempts in. So far so good. By the end of my movement phase, the board looked like this. I'd created my wall and put the onus firmly back on Johnny to do something to steal back the initiative. Johnny's move was interesting. Glorfindel used his super speedy horse to get up and tag the Royal Knight at the end of my line, exposing a small gap just ahead of the prize. Elendil then came forth to lead his infantry, save a few who stayed back to shoot. Théoden, meanwhile, was just off doing his own thing behind the trees. He was leading a splinter force up in the hope of getting behind his line and hopefully getting some traps later in the game. We were then into shooting, and Johnny just took his 4 available bows and started working his way through the available riders.
Oh, that's a good roll.
Nearly Yahtzee. And then, so we'll do the first one on this one. Hits the horse.
Yep. Dead horse.
Kills the horse.
Prone rider. It's fine.
The next one we'll do at him again. So 5s.
Sure.
Nope. The next 2 I'll go through at Gamling. So in the ways with this one. So they both hit him.
Both hit him. Poor guy. The poor guy.
And he's alive.
He's alive. Oh, there you
somehow.
Go. Just feathered. Combats. Calling anything?
I will call a combat, yeah.
That's a big surprise.
Johnny was calling his combat with Glorfindel, and I had to decide whether I wanted to defensively use Heroic Defense with Gamling, or if I wanted to strike with Dernhelm. I decided that I could do both, but that's a lot of might early on, and if I just do one, he'll simply target the other one, so I took a big risk and left it. So, into that combat, and all Glorfindel had to do is kill my 1 Royal Guard.
4
high, but you've got Lord West reroll. 6. Come on, Ryder.
The way of yesterday.
It's a 4.
We'll burn all his might.
So that's Glorfindel out of might, turn 1, in order to kill my Royal Guard and make sure his combat goes off. I'm trying to keep all the smugness out of my voice when I say that is a rotten bit of luck.
Yeah, just get him.
Johnny was now in a tough position. His play had been to try and block up the prize to stop me from taking it until his reinforcements could arrive. But that was when Glorfindel had might. Now, the prospect of holding off a horde of Rohan with a couple of strikers in there, by himself, without any might to defend himself with, must only have felt a little bit more helpful than feeding Glorfindel, Lord of the West, legend of Middle-earth and one of the most revered elves of all time, slowly through a pneumatic press.
Yeah, we'll go to Gamling. So edge past that one through there. It's not what I was intending to do actually, but I feel like because I've had to burn all of the might,
I get it.
I don't have a choice. Because I was just going to sit on this and then go, all right,
come at me.
But now I have no might.
So we went straight on to that Glorfindel v Gamling combat.
Okay, so I've got 2.
Yep.
Only a 4, but I've got a banner reroll for myself.
Currently a 4, so I'm winning on fight.
I will reroll for myself on my banner. A 4 again, so you're winning on fight.
The West.
3. So I'll spend a might to win that.
Yep, makes sense.
I decided to try and kill Glorfindel's horse, and I did do a wound, but because Glorfindel is a horse lord, he could chuck a fate at it, which he did.
Right, that's it, I think, isn't it? That's priority. On 6. 4.
Johnny called a move with Isildur, and I counter-called with Merry's Might on Dernhelm.
So 1, 2, 3 is mine.
I just decided to be evil in this game.
Actually, I think I'm feeling pretty good today, actually, yeah.
Poor call on my part. I guess that's what I get for choosing the side that loses literally every engagement they ever fight.
I feel like that was a big one. That was a good. You needed that roll.
I did need that. Yeah. It was going to be a quick game otherwise.
Isildur's move went first then, and most of the elves and men got tied up in combat. Glorfindel did not charge, he just sat on the prize at the end of the row, and it was then time for Dernhelm's move to go. So I started my move by charging Glorfindel with Big Brave Dernhelm. He causes terror, but, you know, she's got courage for her friends, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay, so let's give that a go. Oh.
That was unfortunate. I had to spend both of her will and Merry's will to make the charge. I really wanted to dogpile Glorfindel this turn, so that's exactly what I did, and I didn't fluff any more courage checks. The rest of my riders just sort of closed the jaws of death. My left flank used their big old move to wrap in around the last alliance line, and my right flank that's been dilly-dallying behind those trees came in from the other side. I was pretty content that the jaws were firmly in place, but then some Elven Knights came and tagged the back of my line, which made it a double jaws of death situation, or a jawception, if you will, which you probably shouldn't.
Into combats then. So Isildur's calling combat.
Yep.
Well, I'll strike with Eowyn.
So Isildur called combat against a single dismounted rider of Rohan, and Dernhelm was calling a strike to try and beat Glorfindel this turn and do some serious damage while he's trapped. Before we get into it, you should look up from your own painting to admire this fantastic paint job on Johnny's Glorfindel. That's right, I know you weren't really watching.
So we've got Isildur on 1.
Yep.
Oh, joys.
Is that a 3 high?
3 high at the moment.
Jesus.
I've got a banner.
5. 3.
Joys.
Does he have the might to get to...
He does not.
Right. Okay, I'll try and take the horse.
Yep.
6.
So mighty Isildur not only failed to win his duel against a single dismounted rider of Rohan, but he lost his horse in the process. I get it's super frustrating stuff. And it's easy for me to say being on the winning side, but it is also the magic of this game, that any model can do anything. Chaff units truly can surprise you. It's hard to find that anywhere else. I must admit I didn't say that to Johnny though, because I thought he might punch me. That set the tone for a messy round of combat. I lost 2 riders, but I reaped a bloody harvest in return. The real challenge now was to try and keep the insufferable look of self-satisfaction from my extremely stupid face. At the end of the round, it was time for Glorfindel's combat against Dernhelm and 2 riders. I started with my strike roll.
Come on.
5.
5, so I'm up to 8.
5, 8. Yep. So I'll let you roll because you get it.
So Dernhelm, we're on 5, so I could might that. And the 2 riders, 4. So I'll spend them. Well, let's see you roll first.
Yeah, so I got 6.
So I'll might my 5 to a 6.
Yeah, so
That meant that Dernhelm was now out of might, but it was well worth it if I could do some serious damage.
So this is her. So it's 1, 2 each. None. So 2.
So 2. All right. So 2 fate.
And he spent 1, hasn't he, so far?
Spent 1. Yep.
So plus 1. So 1 wound down, and he's out of fate.
Takes a wound.
There you go, Glorfindel now has 2 wounds and no fate. It could have gone better, but I need to get him off that objective, so it was worth taking the risk.
Excuse me. Well, back to priority then. It's a 6, and I don't think you can take it because you had it last turn. No, I had it last turn. So it's yours.
So it is mine, yeah.
Yes.
Any heroics?
After Johnny very rudely refused to let me cheat him out of another consecutive turn of priority, I called a move with Gamling. Johnny did not countercall, and so by the end of the move, I just tagged up as much as I possibly could and really focused on Glorfindel. I needed him off the prize so I could actually dig it up. This meant sending both Théoden and Dernhelm into him this turn, along with a few retainers to complete the trap.
So we're straight into combat, and it's your priority.
Yes. Any heroics?
I decided to call my Death Special Rule. The Death Special Rule means that I get 1 free strike or combat on each eligible hero this turn. I called strikes with both Dernhelm and Théoden, taking no chances, because I really wanted to win the fight against Glorfindel this turn so I can start digging up that damn prize. I then called a combat with Gamling, basically just because it's free. I didn't have any expectation that it would really go off this turn because he had 2 elves on him. In reply, Johnny called a combat with Isildur.
How many? He's got 2 on him, isn't he?
2, yeah. Gets the 6.
Cool. Yep, nothing I can do.
Isildur won the fight, as you'd hope, and then he just needed 2 4s on 3 dice to get the 2 kills and make the combat go off.
2 4s here.
You can do that.
No, we
can't
can
do
one,
that.
so we'll do this one. Kill that one. You win.
And the one's backed away.
Gamling also lost his fight, but I'm sure that was small consolation to Johnny, and it was kind of to be expected. In the combats there was more utter brutality. I did lose a couple of riders, but the last alliance did bear the brunt.
One on my left is also dead.
And after all this, we came to the big one, Glorfindel.
This one, so do you want to do 2 strikes?
Yes, my 2 strikers. So Théoden, he's up to 10. So Dernhelm first. She's on 5s. Théoden, he's on 5s. We have might on Théoden, so I can get up to 6. But not needed.
So Lord of the
West, yep. Do you want to cops as we roll? Cocked again. 5. Just 3 strikes from Dernhelm. 2. 4. Strength 4 up to 5 on the charge. Yeah.
So that capped another difficult turn for Johnny. All I needed to do now was protect the dig site and have someone actually claim the prize. We went back to priority, which I lost. I called a heroic move with Théoden and Johnny had nothing left to counter with. Part of that move I could finally attempt to dig up the prize.
Go on. That's cocked. That's dug up the prize. So I'll dump that on him. But then
My dismount handed the prize off to a rider, and to be honest, this kind of resolved the game, with Isildur dismounted and tied up. And with Glorfindel dead, my rider galloping off into the distance, I basically saw this thing home. By the end of the game, I'd also broken Johnny. This made the final score a wipeout 12-0. Seize the prize is always a good one for riders of Théoden. I've not actually lost it at a tournament yet. Glorfindel made a huge gamble by placing himself alone behind enemy lines right at the first turn, and it could have worked even without might. That held me up for a good few turns. It's just unfortunate that he couldn't really make any more damage stick. This is one of the reasons why gambling generating a single point of might a turn is not to be underestimated. By the end of the game I was calling move after move after move, and there was nothing that Johnny could do about it. That meant that my riders were always getting the charges, always getting their bonuses, and just winning the war of attrition. Anyway, with many thanks to Johnny for a good game, and we were into lunch.
Hey, dog. Hello. Hello, doggy.
The next game would see me go from fighting the men of the Second Age to the men of the Third. It was Minas Tirith with mighty Boromir and his big banner. For this game I'd be playing Robert Jackson, and like I said, he had Boromir with banner and a horse and 13 knights. He then had a regular captain with a further 5 knights and then 8 Rangers of Gondor. The game would be Breakthrough, where we're trying to capture 4 objectives on the board, 2 on the centre line and 1 in each deployment zone. The one in your opponent's deployment zone is worth more than those on the centre line. By the end of deployment the board looked like this, and I had a stroke of luck by seizing priority. The men of Minas Tirith declined to call any heroics, so I was free to get moving. After some faffing about with the camera, of course. When I finally did get moving, I decided to just pile in. If I could box in the Gondorians now, then I might be able to just keep them there until the game ended. I did make one foolish error by leaving a gap between the house and my line. Gondor exploited that error, and by the end of the first turn movement, we had a proper Middle-earth strategy battle game clump. On the far side of the church, Dernhelm had led just a handful of riders against the Gondorian Rangers, hoping that, mounted, they'd be able to overwhelm them in short order.
Quickly. So we're straight into combat. So any heroics?
Obviously, Mr. Boromir is going to use one of his plentiful of might to call a heroic combat. We're going to do one with our captain here. He's going to do a heroic combat.
Yep, cool. Combats first. Which one do you want to start with?
We'll do Boromir first.
Boromir? I can't shield because I'm on a horse. So 5. 6. Do you want to might that?
I will ban a reroll first.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, 6. So we will might that to a 6.
Okay, so down to 4 might. Save some 5s. Extraordinarily dead. Save some 6s for later.
Boromir is actually going to move to there.
Okay.
Which then pretty much tags every fight around him.
Sounds good.
What followed was a brutal round of combat in which 5 riders of Rohan were killed against 3 Minas Tirith knights. I was feeling the pressure, but I just needed the line to hold as we went into priority turn 2.
Going with heavy with 6.
I can't take it because I had priority first turn. So we'll spend Théoden's last might because I can then I'll be generating next turn, and that's going to catch up to Gamling there. So basically that guy, and then from then onwards is out.
I will call it I'll call a move with Bozza.
And that kind of set the pattern for the game, so this is quite abrupt, and apologies, but I am going to speedrun the rest of this one. Now, this is for 2 reasons. The first is some of the interesting stuff happens on the far side of the church as my riders try and run down the remaining Gondor Rangers, and you can't see any of that because of aforementioned church. Second, I really like games with a story, and it's no one's fault, but this one wasn't the most cinematic game I've ever played. It was a long, grinding war of attrition in which the Knights of Gondor never managed to break out of the little square that the Rohan had created around them. The Gondorian clump got smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually they just broke. No named heroes on either side died, so again, no climactic duels to narrate. The most exciting bit is about to happen in the time-lapse. You'll see there's one Gondor knight that used his head, realised what was happening, and decided to go around the little house to try and seize one of the objectives from me. However, my single unencumbered rider of Rohan sniped out his horse and he rolled a 1 on his Throne Rider test. A good try. At the end, Rohan held their own objective and the 2 middle line objectives, and Gondor only held their own objective. Anyway, sorry again for not detailing the game in full, it was just very, very grindy. So, as we went into the break, I realised I was top of my pod and super excited about the prospect of winning something. However, there was one hurdle still in my way, and that hurdle took the form of Aidan Lummer. Aidan brought a force that I think has hit the scene pretty hard, but I hadn't come across yet. And that's the Beornings. His army, of course, included the terrifying monstrous bears, Beorn and Grimbeorn, and then 10 Beornings. The game was Assassination, where you pick one of your non-leader heroes to be your assassin, and one of their non-leader heroes to be your target. You've got to try and kill your target with your assassin, and you keep your selection secret until the end of the game. He only had 2 heroes, so I had no choice but to choose Grimbeorn as the target, and I chose Dernhelm as my assassin. Dernhelm has a good number of attacks, might and fate, and she's got strike, so she was better placed than Gamling, who was the only other option, to actually do the deed. I felt pretty well placed to win this game. This is one of the few games where the Rohan's ability to skirmish by firing and retreating is actually going to come in handy, because if I can just chip a couple of wounds off my target bear and keep myself safe and out of harm's way, then I can take the game, even if not by a landslide number of points. So the game started. With my heart almost in my throat, we went into priority turn 1.
That's a 1 for me.
It's a 3.
So no heroics from me.
No heroics, no nothing from me. So let's transform with Beorn to start off with. It's the easy one.
In the move phase, the bears and the Beornings advanced on me, save for those with great bows who just stayed put. In my turn, I just shuffled about. On the left-hand side, a bunch of riders who couldn't get in 2 ranks to fire went around the left-hand side of that little pool there, and on the right-hand side, a bunch of riders who had no line of sight shuffled over to try and get line of sight. My heroes then just backed out of the 24-inch range of his great bows.
Let's do them one at a time. So first one is going to go for that Royal Guard.
Yep.
He hits, they hit on a 4.
It's 4, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
So his hits, goes up.
Yep, rider.
So his strength 4 and a d6 and needing a 5.
Yep, sounds good.
It's a 6.
Nice. Which one? The Royal Guard?
The Royal Guard, yeah.
Well, it's a good start.
That's not bad. And then we'll do 2 on, we'll just go for 2 riders there. So first one misses, second one hits.
Up or down?
Goes up, does nothing because he's d5.
That's right. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here.
Yep.
We're going to go for these 4 here,
Sure.
I think. So these 2 will have in the ways for the bear.
Yep.
The others won't. So we'll do the 4 that don't first.
Yep.
That's 1 hit.
Yep.
Not a great start. 4, no. And then the 2 within way. So in the way. So roll to hit first. So
Yep.
1 hit. In the way. Fails. So on the bear. A 6
Yep.
and then 5. Oh, that's a wound on the
All
bear.
right, bear save, fails. I'll might that.
So it cost him a might, but he did manage to save that wound, which was a little bit deflating. This is because in their legendary legion, the bears have got a 5-up sort of fate save.
Nope. And then the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 3 hits.
Yep.
These are all going on the bow-armed Beornings.
That's 3. What's their defense?
The Beornings are du4, so that's 3 wounds. So you've killed one and wounded another.
And I think that's everything. Back to priority.
Yep, cool. Oh, sorry, with a 5.
5, no worries. 2, so it's yours.
Any heroics?
I think you're out of range, so I don't think so. You're definitely out of range.
Yep.
In what's becoming something of a terrifying pattern, the bears and the Bjornings with the axes advanced, and the Bjornings with the bows simply shimmied up so that they could keep range.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be super lame, and I'm going to back off.
That's fine.
I did feel a bit bad playing like this, but with the pod's top spot in sight, there are no sweaty, win-at-all-cost depths that I'm not willing to plumb to seize the prize. After some limited success in turn 1, I knew this strategy could work. I just needed to re-visualise the bears from terrifying Revenant-style charging behemoths ready to tear Leonardo DiCaprio half to death, to dogs chasing cars that they're simply never going to catch. In the shooting phase, I dispatched another of the Bjornings. However, before we went on to the next turn, I had something critical on my mind.
Nothing.
Cool.
Should we straighten this mat out a bit? There's a sort of bulge in the middle.
Yeah, I'll try and pull it that way first.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Cool. Priority?
Priority. 6 is mine. Do you want to do any heroics?
Nope, none from me.
No.
I decided to do something dramatic and revolutionary and excellent for the content.
Probably going to sit here for the turn.
Okay, cool.
In their move, the bears carried on barreling headlong towards the Rohirrim, but they did also split up. This gave me the opportunity to potentially avoid one bear entirely and simply defeat Grimbeorn, my target, before the game ended. Given that, I wanted them to break quickly, so it was helpful that I killed another Bjorning in the shooting phase.
Priority?
Priority, Jesus. I want this one.
With a 1.
4.
Continuing my boring game plan, I backed away just far enough to avoid a bear hug for the turn, but not so far that I couldn't shoot. The bears themselves remained in hot pursuit. My shooting phase was apocalyptic, hitting only 4 times out of 20 riders. His was merely quite poor, and he ended up killing 1 horse. And now, with the bears finally within mauling range, we come to an important priority roll.
5.
6.
Oh, nicely done.
That's better. Any heroics?
It's cool with Dernhelm.
Yep.
That will catch up to there.
Yep.
Beorn called a move and so did Dernhelm, which means it was time for our first move off, which in turn meant we had to go through the rigmarole of deciding who was the goodest.
Your big scary bears.
I'll take being more evil.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. It's your priority. Sorry.
Yep. So 1, 2, 3 it's me, 4, 5, 6 it goes to you.
Woo.
It goes to me.
Okay.
That was an exceedingly poor call. Now I think the problem that the riders on the right made here is they got their bears confused. Grimbeorn is a brown bear, but Beorn is a black bear, and so playing dead isn't an option. Actually, what they should have done, if they couldn't find a safe place to escape to, was to try and make themselves as big as possible and make a lot of noise. Now, losing that heroic move off has left me with an interesting conundrum. Actually, let me rephrase. To any reasonable player, it's not a conundrum at all. In my head, the calculation is, should I come to the assistance of the riders who have just been tagged by Beorn? My thinking is that if I do, and I succeed, then I can take him out, and that will give me plenty of time to deal with Grimbeorn, my actual target, at my leisure. Now this is silly, not least because it will require me to commit Dernhelm, my assassin, to a bear who isn't her target. This is because she can strike, but the bear can also strike, and if I lose that combat, it could be all over. I must admit what factored into my decision making was that it wasn't a very exciting game so far, with me just constantly retreating. I could feed Beorn a rider a turn in order to keep him at bay whilst I deal with my target, Grimbeorn, but that's not very themey, so I decided to commit. So, an objectively poor decision, but if it pays off, it will be excellent. After a bunch of terror checks, the bear had been surrounded and, for good or ill, my fate was sealed. In the remaining moves, Grimbeorn charged on the left flank, and my unencumbered riders decided to ride out and try to overwhelm the remaining Bjornings. In the shoot phase, almost nothing happened. It seems that after a productive start to the game in the shooting, it's all gone downhill.
Okay, so we're into combat then.
Yes. Any heroics from yourself?
We're going to have to strike with Eowyn, Dernhelm, whatever.
Yep.
And that's the only hero I've got in
Yep.
combat.
I will strike with Beorn.
We decided to keep the big important combat to the end, and in the meantime, a few riders and Bjornings were killed, including in one remarkably incompetent combat.
Thank you.
Yep, 2 for me. Oh, double 1.
Double 1.
Oh, right. I've got a
banner?
banner, so I'm going to banner that.
Yeah.
You've also got a bear banner, haven't you? Oh,
So a 1.
another
So
1!
I will take it on the double 1. Both strikes on that guy, needing a 4. Takes him on the 6 there.
Oh, Jesus, that was unfortunate.
And then the important one.
Yes.
So Beorn
Strike up.
strikes from 8 to 10.
Okay,
Deep breaths, everyone.
come on, Dernhelm. No, she said 7.
Right. So I've got 4 on the charge.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Got the 6.
This could have been an error.
So we'll do first 2 strikes on Dernhelm.
Okay.
Needing 3s. So 1 wound.
Yep, so I'm going to try and fate that. It's fated.
Yep, so next 2 strikes, another wound.
Okay, on Dernhelm again.
Yep.
She's got 1 fate left. That's fated.
Yep, another 2 strikes, 2 more wounds.
Okay, so predictably, there was a technical error here, obviously. My audio was corrupted for the rest of this game, so all I've got is the default camera audio, so I'm basically going to be describing it to you. Many sincere apologies for that, but long story short, Dernhelm died, as did a bunch of other riders. This was a really nasty blow, and one that was entirely of my own making. It's just so frustrating that it didn't have to happen at all. But I was a long way from being out of the game. Yes, my assassin had died, but my target was now within reach of Théoden, who also has strike, and a whole bunch of riders over there. Plus, I knew that Beorn couldn't be his assassin, so he isn't going to max out on points, even if Dernhelm was his target. All I needed to do now was not make any more silly mistakes and claw it back. Now, what this does mean is there's basically just one critical combat left, which is trying to take down Grim Beorn. So I'm going to sort of fast forward to that bit. If you want to know what happened between here and there, I discovered that Bjornings, despite their appearance as unarmoured farmers, were surprisingly hard to kill. By the time I reached Grimbeorn, I was broken, and so realistically, it was a now or never one-shot attempt to claw this back from the brink. So we came to the big combat. I had no might left on Théoden, so I couldn't strike. The bear rolled first. With only a 4 high, I was in with a good chance. I'd successfully charged with Théoden and 3 riders. I therefore had plenty of attempts to try it. Happily, the riders got their 6. Now the bear was trapped. Because of the riders doubling their strikes and getting the bonus attack on the charge, I had a whole bunch of attempts to just get 2 6s to chip the last wounds off the bear. With 12 dice, the stats were on my side. No! That'll be just the 1 6 then. I can't show you my facial expression here, but I'll let my dog represent it as she tries and fails to catch this treat out the air in slow motion. Yep, just like that. So for the want of one more 5, it was over, and the bears had taken it. We did keep going, but in the next turn, Grimbeorn claimed Théoden. By this point, the Rohirrim had accepted their fate. This was an absolutely spectacular game. It genuinely had my heart beating hard in my chest for the entire thing. In the last few turns, neither of us had any idea how it was going to go. We were barely clinging to life. I hope Aidan won't mind me saying that this is one game I could have won if it were not for that one fatal decision. The bears were divided. All I had to do was feed him a rider per turn whilst I went to deal with Grimbeorn. Instead, I threw away my assassin unnecessarily. As a result, I lost my top spot in the pod. I did end up taking 3rd though, and with 4 wins and 3 losses in the tournament, I was happy enough. It had been a truly spectacular weekend. The venue is more than just an idle novelty. You're going to be spending your whole weekend there, you want it to be something nice, which it was. But also with everyone staying in the hotel and eating and drinking there, it was just a really cool sense of community. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. These events are run by 7 City Collectables and World Champion. They ran another event called the Gates of Gondolin recently. This was in the Engine Shed in Wetherby, another really fantastic looking venue. Tragically, I was spending a wholesome and fulfilling weekend with my family, so I couldn't go. But I've heard a lot of great reviews, and I am happy to recommend 7 City's Middle-earth events. And that's not just because I've got an affiliate link with them and therefore I'm sort of obliged to shill for them. I mean, don't get me wrong, for the right price, I will promote anything. I have no standards, no code of ethics. I mean, I would have urged you all to go and see the movie version of Cats if they'd sent me some plastic toys. So I guess take this how you will. But genuinely, amazing event. My next event will be the Scouring of Cheshire, and that was one of the wildest camping experiences we've had, particularly for a tournament. I'll be taking my elves, and for this event, and all videos going forward, every one of my miniatures now will have the initials of one of my patrons painted on the bottom of the base, and if a model does something particularly cool, they will flag up which of the patrons was responsible, and I'll send you a free gift of some kind. Equally, if one of my models does something really awful, we'll humiliate that Patreon live in the video. I'm quite excited about this. You know, I finally found a way of making you feel bad for having financially supported me for such a long time. Finally, on the prize giving front, I promised that I'd give away my Tolkien £2 coin this week. We picked a random Patreon using my giant plushie D20, and the lucky winner is Russell Preece. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Oh, and join my Facebook group. Join the Facebook group, please. It's on Facebook. It's a Facebook group. You've got Facebook. Join the Facebook group.
There's something on my windshield. A note. I just spotted it when I was driving. Let's see. Oh, it's a cock. And whoever left it was playing Rohan with elves. It's not even someone I played. Why did I deserve this?
So between game 1 and game 2 there was time for a little bit of mischief. Alex from Battle Camper did let me know that he thought he might have a wee speeding ticket on the way up, so I decided to put a fake one on his windshield.
I have my suspicions.